The cage of comfort, breaking free to be real. Introduction. You recognize that familiar sensation. The one that coils in your stomach on a Sunday evening, a silent apprehension of the days to come. Or perhaps it's the low thrum of discontent that accompanies even your sunniest moments. You're not teetering on the brink of disaster, nor are you in acute agony, yet you are undeniably moored. You survey your existence, and while it may appear perfectly adequate from the outside, an inner voice murmurs, "Is this the extent of it all?" A yearning arises for something more, a grander version of yourself, a life steeped in passion and purpose, yet it remains just beyond your grasp. It is akin to standing on the precipice of a magnificent, sprawling vista, yet being paralyzed from taking that first step. This volume endeavors to illuminate that landscape and, more profoundly, to unravel the unseen impediments that tether you to its edge. We shall delve into the sanctuary of sameness. Be warned, this sanctuary is not constructed of iron bars or secured by formidable locks. It is meticulously crafted from the most yielding materials, the balm of familiarity, the comforting cadence of routine, the predictable solace of the known. Yet, in a curious paradox, this haven of ease can metamorphose into the most suffocating of prisons. It offers a sense of security, yes, but it is also the very place where growth stagnates, where your spirit begins to wane, and where the vivid hues of your potential fade into a monotonous, predictable gray. This confinement is not imposed by external forces. It is a self-erected constraint. Envision it as the invisible perimeter of your own private grounds. You are acutely aware of the boundary, instinctively maintaining a respectful distance, even though no one compels you to do so. These limitations are the deeply ingrained beliefs we harbor about ourselves and the world, beliefs that, while ostensibly protective, actively obstruct us from realizing our full potential and living with unvarnished authenticity. They are the insidious whispers of doubt that declare, you are insufficient, or the risk is too great, or what will others deem? They are the phantoms of apprehension that seize you when you contemplate venturing beyond your accustomed orbit, the dread of failure, the apprehension of success, or the simple terror of being truly witnessed for who you are. Our minds, in their profound and at times misguided programming, assume the roles of both architect and guardian of this enclosure. They murmur doubts, conjure the bleakest of outcomes, and proffer seemingly sound justifications for remaining stationary. They are virtuosos at weaving narratives, tales that legitimize our inertia. For instance, you might harbor a dream of embarking on a creative endeavor only for your mind to swiftly concoct the story that you lack the requisite talent, that others have already surpassed your aspirations, or that your efforts would be a sheer waste of time. Consequently, you remain within the secure confines of your comfortable existence, convincing yourself that this is the prudent, the responsible course of action. This affinity for the familiar, even if it is a familiar brand of discomfort or dissatisfaction, lies at the very core of self-imposed limitation. It is the internal resistance to metamorphosis, the deep-seated contentment with a known, albeit less fulfilling, reality over a future that, while uncertain, holds the promise of liberation. But here lies the exhilarating truth. This enclosure is not immutable. Its walls are not fashioned from stone, but from the ephemeral substance of thoughts and habits. And the wondrous, albeit occasionally daunting, reality is that you possess the very key to unlock its portals. The passage out of this confinement is not a path strewn with effortless ease. It necessitates a willingness to embrace discomfort, to confront the awkwardness, those junctures that feel ungainly, uncertain, or even faintly absurd. It is within these moments, when we dare to shed our meticulously constructed defenses and embrace vulnerability, that true transformation germinates. This journey is about reclaiming your authentic self. It is about shedding the layers of conditioning, the guises we adopt to secure approval, and the fear of censure that constrains us. It is about comprehending that your inherent worth is not contingent upon external validation, but upon your willingness to be seen, truly seen, in all your messy, exquisite imperfection. This is not an exercise in becoming someone you are not. It is a courageous unveiling and embrace of that person you already are, beneath the accumulated strata of shoulds and oughts. Throughout these pages, we shall meticulously dissect the architecture of your personal enclosure, identify the blueprints of your self-imposed limitations, and furnish you with the instruments to dismantle them, segment by segment. We shall explore pragmatic methodologies for challenging your mind's pronouncements, for embracing the awkwardness as a catalyst for growth, and for cultivating the fortitude to lead a life that is not merely comfortable, but profoundly authentic. This book stands as an invitation to step from the periphery of your own narrative and assume the mantle of the protagonist. It is a summons to courage, not as the absence of fear, but as the resolute decision to act in its presence. The enclosure stands open. The choice to remain, or the courage to step forth, rests entirely with you. Are you poised to break free and discover the genuine you, patiently awaiting just beyond the confines of your comfort? Chapter 1. The Chains of Comfort. 1. Understanding our limits. We often find ourselves ensnared, as if confined by an invisible architecture that dictates the scope of our potential. Phrases like, "I lack the financial means for that endeavor," or "my intellect falls short of the requirements for that position," or "I fear the ridicule of others," echo as justifications. These pronouncements, delivered with the gravity of immutable fact, suggest external fortresses erected by the world. Yet, what if the edifice of these constraints is, in fact, a construct of our own making? What if these perceived boundaries are, in essence, self-imposed limitations? Consider the remarkable ingenuity of the human mind. It possesses the capacity to conjure entire universes, to unravel intricate enigmas, and to envision futures yet unlived. Paradoxically, when confronted with the landscape of our own existence, we often exhibit a peculiar intellectual contraction, as if our mental faculties diminish, unable to perceive beyond a confined and familiar territory. It is within this constricted space that the cage of comfort truly asserts its dominion. It whispers assurances that our present circumstances, however unfulfilling, represent the zenith of safety, because they are known. The discomfort of stagnation is a familiar companion, and our minds have meticulously cultivated an acclimatization to its presence. The unknown, conversely, looms as a boundless, tenebrous ocean, devoid of any guarantee of a tranquil haven. Thus, we elect the predictable sting of the familiar over the terrifying allure of the uncharted. Our minds are virtuosos in the art of fabricating narratives that rationalize an action. If you have ever experienced the spark of a nascent idea, only to have it extinguished by immediate internal pronouncements, such as, "that is patently absurd," or "no one would ever embrace such a concept," or even a more profound, "that is far too esoteric for my sensibilities," then you have borne witness to this masterful internal machination. It operates with the precision of a seasoned advocate, vigorously prosecuting your own aspirations. It scours for even the most ephemeral fragment of evidence, however insubstantial, to fortify its assertion that change is fraught with peril and immobility is the apotheosis of wisdom. It will dredge up past failures, insidiously sow seeds of doubt regarding your capabilities, and magnify the potential adverse repercussions of any nascent undertaking. This is the quintessence of self-imposed limitation in motion, an unseen barrier meticulously constructed from the mortar of apprehension, and a deeply entrenched predilection for the familiar, irrespective of the attendant suffering that familiarity may entail. Reflect upon the concept of enough. Our comfort zone serves as the crucible in which we define this elusive threshold. It is the locus where a semblance of equilibrium is achieved, where life remains tenable, and where the imperative for strenuous exertion is minimized. If our current life trajectory precipitates profound unhappiness and considerable anguish, one might reasonably surmise that any deviation would be welcomed. Yet, our minds frequently engage in a sophisticated form of deception. They assert that even this painful status quo constitutes enough of a challenge, and any increment thereof would prove overwhelming. The comfort zone transmutes into a species of emotional thermostat, calibrated to a level that feels bearable, yet perpetually falls, short of genuine warmth or profound fulfillment. We habituate ourselves to a quantifiable degree of discomfort because its predictability is assured. We may lament it, express frustration, but we rarely initiate concerted efforts to extricate ourselves. The reason? Extrication necessitates an immersion into the unknown, a prospect considerably more daunting than the familiar, albeit dull, ache of our present reality. This is the insidious essence of the cage. Its confines need not be a theater of extreme suffering. More often, it is a realm of mild, persistent dissatisfaction. By remaining within its confines, however, we forfeit the opportunity to apprehend what lies beyond. We become so acclimated to the sensation of confinement that we begin to perceive the boundaries as immutable realities, permanently inscribed by external forces. We might articulate, "I am simply not an artistically inclined individual," or "my reticence precludes me from vocalizing my opinions," or "I am not the sort of person who embraces risk." These declarations, presented as objective truths, are frequently mere reverberations of the limiting narratives our minds have assiduously sculpted to ensure our security within the sanctuary of comfort. One of the most potent mechanisms through which these self-imposed limitations are solidified is the insidious what-if labyrinth. Our minds, functioning as prodigious storytellers, engage in hyperdrive when confronted with the prospect of venturing beyond our established parameters. They conjure an array of dire what-ifs. What if I pursue that promotion and am unsuccessful? What if I launch that enterprise and it founders? What if I articulate my true sentiments and am met with rejection? What if I appear foolish? These imagined futures are rendered in the starkest hues, saturated with visions of disaster and ignominy. The mind, in its protective guise, marshals these extreme scenarios to persuade us that immobility represents the sole rational course of action. It is a form of psychological gaslighting, wherein our internal narrator convinces us that our apprehensions are incontrovertible truths and our capacities are demonstrably inferior to their actual potential. This apprehension of the unknown is not, in fact, an indictment of the unknown itself. Rather, it is a manifestation of our perceived incapacity to navigate it. We harbor doubts concerning our innate resilience, our problem-solving acumen, our inherent adaptability. The mind, seeking to preserve an illusion of control, gravitates towards the certainty of the predictable, even if that certainty is predicated upon a foundation of dissatisfaction. Consequently, it amplifies the potential adverse outcomes of change, rendering them appear inevitable and catastrophic, while simultaneously diminishing the potential positive repercussions, or indeed, the mere possibility of learning and evolving from the experience. Furthermore, we encounter the phenomenon of cults of limitation. These are not literal congregations with ceremonial attire and incantations, but rather the invisible affiliations we join, often unwittingly, that prescribe our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. Consider the cult of invincibility. We are indoctrinated from an early age to perceive sadness as detrimental, something to be eschewed or concealed. When experiencing sorrow, we may admonish ourselves, "I ought not to feel this way," or "I must quickly overcome this." This cult pronounces our emotions as erroneous, and true fortitude is equated with the perpetual display of happiness. Analogously, there exists the cult of fearlessness. This cohort posits that courageous individuals are inherently devoid of fear. To acknowledge fear is to be branded as weak. Thus, we learn to suppress our apprehensions, to feign their absence rather than endeavoring to comprehend them and to advance in their presence. These cults instruct us in the art of adopting personas. We learn to present a carefully curated version of ourselves to the world, a version we deem acceptable, one that conforms to the narrow strictures dictated by these groups. We may stifle our creative impulses, having been informed they lack practicality. We may conceal our vulnerabilities, believing they will be exploited. We may silence our authentic voice, convinced of its insignificance. These external pressures transmute into internalized convictions, and these convictions form the very fabric of our self-imposed limitations. They dictate who we should be, rather than fostering the exploration of who we truly are. The inherent flaw in these cults, and the masquerades we adopt as their impediment to authenticity. They foster a schism between our inner selves and our outward presentation. We may achieve external accolades, yet experience an internal void, a sense of unfulfillment, and a feeling of being ensnared. This arises from living a life governed by external expectations and internal anxieties, rather than by our own genuine desires and values. We adhere to the tenets of the cults, and these tenets are designed to maintain our diminutive stature, our predictability, and our safety within our self-constructed cages. The cults of limitation further entrench the notion that certain pursuits are intrinsically not for us. We may observe an accomplished artist, a confident orator, or an intrepid traveler, and inwardly declare, "That is not within my purview. I could never achieve such a feat." This judgment is frequently predicated on deeply ingrained beliefs about our own aptitudes, beliefs that have been sculpted through years of conditioning. We have been persuaded that these talents or experiences are the exclusive domain of a different caliber of individual, one endowed with inherent gifts, greater bravery, or superior fortune. This represents another stratum of self-imposed limitation, the conviction that our potential is immutable and predetermined, rather than a quality that can be nurtured and expanded. The solace derived from adhering to these constraints is a peculiar form of comfort. It is the comfort of predictability, the comfort of circumventing immediate pain or embarrassment. However, this comfort exacts a considerable toll. It is the price of unactualized potential, of deferred dreams, of a life less vibrant and less authentic than it could be. The comfort of remaining within our limitations is akin to being swathed in a comforting blanket on a frigid night. It offers immediate solace, yet it prevents us from venturing forth and experiencing the broader world, with its myriad possibilities, for warmth, adventure, and genuine connection. The mind, in its unyielding pursuit of comfort and security, will invariably devise justifications for these limitations. It will assert your age as an impediment, your youth as a deficiency, your busyness as an insurmountable obstacle, your fatigue as an excuse, your qualifications as inadequate. It will highlight the triumphs of others as a testament to your own inadequacy, rather than as a source of inspiration. It will meticulously enumerate every potential obstacle, every conceivable negative outcome, presenting them as insurmountable barriers. This is the ego's defensive mechanism in operation, desperately endeavoring to safeguard its meticulously constructed self-perception and its idealized vision of who you ought to be. Therefore, how do we commence the process of comprehending these limitations? It begins with a heightened awareness. It commences with a critical examination of the narratives our minds propagate. It starts with scrutinizing the perceived walls surrounding us and posing the questions: who actually erected these barriers? And for what purpose? The initial step is to acknowledge that many of the boundaries we perceive are not inherent truths about our capabilities, but rather the product of our internal narratives, our anxieties, and the societal conditioning we have internalized. These self-imposed limitations are not shackles forged by destiny, but rather invisible threads woven by our own minds, threads that, with conscious effort, can be meticulously unraveled. The expedition towards understanding our limitations is not predicated on the sudden eradication of fear or the instantaneous acquisition of novel skills. It is about a recalibration of our perspective. It involves perceiving these limitations not as immutable endpoints, but as navigational markers directing us towards areas ripe for growth. It entails recognizing that the discomfort we experience when contemplating change is not an indication that we should not change, but rather a potent signal that we are on the cusp of something significant, something that will expand our horizons. and deepen our self-understanding. Having begun to apprehend the self-imposed nature of our limitations, the subsequent critical juncture is to recognize that these boundaries are not unyielding fortifications but rather permeable membranes. The ensuing section will delve into the subtle yet potent ways these limitations manifest in our daily existence, frequently disguised as pragmatic considerations or personal preferences, and will elucidate the process of gently yet firmly challenging them. 2. Fear of the unknown. Our minds, intricate marvels of biological engineering, are meticulously crafted for preservation, acting as sophisticated internal sentinels. Their primary function is to discern the familiar from the novel. That which is known, even if tinged with discomfort, is invariably categorized as secure. Consider the well-trodden path in your own home, the familiar creak of a particular stair tread. Its location, the precise manner of stepping over it, and the unique acoustic signature are all etched into your awareness, rendering it utterly predictable. Conversely, the unknown represents an uncharted territory, a void devoid of experiential data. The internal sentinel lacks any intelligence regarding potential perils. Consequently, its default response is an urgent alarm, warning, unfamiliar. It is this inherent mechanism that imbues the concept of the unknown with a far more potent terror than its actual manifestation. The paralyzing force is not the unknown itself, but the phantoms conjured by our minds within that void. Our mental faculties, akin to prolific artists, tend to employ the darkest pigments when confronting the unknown, saturating the blanks with our most profound anxieties and insecurities. This, in its purest form, is the genesis of self-imposed limitation, the erection of invisible barricades by our own consciousness, obstructing our passage into unexplored realms. Picture yourself ensnared within a structure succumbing to flames. The encroaching heat is palpable, the acrid odor of smoke fills your lungs, and the grim reality of your predicament is undeniable. Before you lies a door, a portal to an alley shrouded in impenetrable darkness. Its contents remain an enigma. Is it a thoroughfare to safety? A dead end? A den of wild beasts? Does it even lead outdoors? The sheer dread of venturing into that abyssal unknown can become so overwhelming that it induces a profound inertia, even as the inferno behind you intensifies. You might rationalize, at least this burning edifice is known. I comprehend its pain, its suffocating smoke. I have learned to conserve breath, to prolong my precarious existence. This, then, is the paradox of the cage of comfort. The familiar ache, the well-understood suffering, begins to eclipse the terrifying leap into the chasm of uncertainty. Our self-imposed limitations whisper a seditious counsel. Remaining stationary, even amidst conflagration, is preferable to confronting the daunting prospect of the unknown. This innate preference for the known discomfort over the unarticulated uncertainty is deeply embedded in our neurological architecture. For millennia, survival was inextricably linked to vigilance. A creature prone to reckless exploration of every novel stimulus likely failed to propagate its lineage. Those who adhered to established routes, who possessed intimate knowledge of reliable water sources and the identification of toxic flora, exhibited a significantly higher probability of survival. Our brains bear the imprint of this ancient programming. They perceive the unknown as an existential threat, and they relentlessly strive to confine us within the familiar confines of our current understanding. Even when this understanding represents a source of profound unhappiness, a soul-crushing occupation, a relationship that diminishes our sense of self, or a life perceived as ebbing away, the mind still flags it as secure due to its sheer familiarity. The solace derived here is not pleasure, but the absence of the terrifying gamble inherent in the unknown. It is the tranquility of predictability, even when that predictability is steeped in suffering. Our minds, in their perpetual quest to safeguard us, can, at times, overzealously activate their protective mechanisms, leading to unintended harm. Confronted with the unknown, our minds do not merely register a lack of information, they actively construct a pantheon of dire possibilities, a strategic deterrent against venturing forth. It is as if our internal security system transcends mere alerts, projecting lurid cinematic narratives onto the inner walls of our consciousness. This is the domain where the mind becomes an active saboteur, populating the darkness with imagined monstrosities. Consider the aspiring entrepreneur. They possess a brilliant concept, an ardent passion, and a meticulously crafted plan. Yet, their inner monologue begins to sow seeds of doubt. What if I falter? What if financial ruin befalls me? What if I become the subject of derision? What if the pressure proves insurmountable? What if I am simply not adequate? These are not random musings, they are elaborately woven tapestries of dread, meticulously designed to render the unknown so perilous that remaining in their current, unfulfilling employment appears to be the sole rational recourse. They effectively articulate, while my present situation breeds misery, at least it guarantees a steady income and shields me from the specter of public humiliation or financial devastation. This is the mind's insidious stratagem, rendering the familiar pain of their current circumstances a more palatable, a more tangible alternative than the uncertain promise of their aspirations. They erect a self-imposed limitation by painting the unknown with the somber hues of their deepest-seated fears. This phenomenon also explains our profound attachment to what we term familiar pain. It is a concept that defies conventional understanding, is it not? How can suffering engender comfort? It is not a comfort akin to the embrace of a warm blanket. Rather, it is a comfort rooted in its very knownness. We have learned to navigate its contours. Our lives have been structured around its presence. We are intimately acquainted with its boundaries, its intensity, and its predictable patterns. We have developed coping mechanisms, however maladaptive, to contend with it. This familiar pain becomes an integral component of our identity, a predictable landscape upon which our lives are mapped. When the prospect of change emerges, particularly a change that ushers us into the unknown, it is perceived as a seismic disruption. It demands an immense expenditure of energy, considerable fortitude, and an unwavering willingness to confront setbacks. Our brains, perpetually seeking the path of least resistance to maintain equilibrium, even a negative equilibrium, can recoil from such demands. The effort required to venture into the unknown, devoid of any guarantee of a more favorable outcome, can feel exponentially more daunting than the continued endurance of the predictable, albeit unpleasant, reality we currently inhabit. We may find ourselves thinking, it is simpler to simply endure this than to navigate such an expanse of uncertainty. This is the unvarnished manifestation of the cage of comfort. The fear of the unknown wields such formidable power that it compels us to choose the devil we know over the one we do not. Our self-imposed limitations are constructed upon this foundational principle of favoring the predictable ache over the terrifying potential of an entirely different existence. Therefore, how might we begin to extricate ourselves from this deeply ingrained apprehension? One of our most potent instruments is the recognition of a specific visceral sensation, the cringe. You are undoubtedly familiar with this feeling. It is that fleeting moment when an idea or a suggestion elicits a physical flinch, a tightening in the pit of your stomach, or an almost instinctual urge to avert your gaze. It is a profound sensation of discomfort, an internal pronouncement of, "Oh no, I could never possibly do that." Frequently, the very catalysts that provoke this intense cringe are precisely those that propel us toward growth. They are the actions, the concepts, the dialogues that challenge the boundaries of our comfort zones, our self-perceptions, and our ingrained routines. If an idea triggers a potent cringe, it serves as a powerful signal. It is your mind's alarm system sounding, not necessarily to warn of imminent danger, but to alert you that you are on the precipice of transgressing the limits of your current constraints. Reflect upon this. When does this cringe manifest with its greatest intensity? Is it when someone proposes you embark on a new hobby you have long harbored a curiosity for, yet have self-professedly deemed yourself incapable of pursuing? Is it when a confidante encourages you to articulate your thoughts in a meeting, a setting where you typically maintain a conspicuous silence? Is it when you contemplate submitting an application for a position that appears to lie just beyond your current grasp? These are the junctures where the unknown feels most threatening, and our minds erect the most formidable bulwarks of resistance. The cringe is not an injunction to retreat. It is a signpost. It directs you to the very edge of your comfort zone, the locus where your self-imposed limitations exert their most potent hold. To embrace this cringe, to lean into its discomforting embrace, is not to actively seek out gratuitous suffering. It is to comprehend that this feeling of profound discomfort is frequently the very gateway to growth, to liberation, and to the realization of your more authentic self. It is the signal that you are on the verge of breaching a barrier that your mind, in its zealous pursuit of safety within the confines of comfort, has meticulously constructed. The apprehension of the unknown, therefore, is not some external specter lurking in the shadows. It is an internal architect, a master craftsman of the very cage we inhabit. Our minds, driven by a primal imperative for predictability and survival, erect elaborate defenses against any novelty. They imbue the void of the unknown with our deepest anxieties, rendering the familiar pain of our present circumstances the sole sanctuary. We become so acclimatized to the predictable ache of our existence that the very notion of navigating unfamiliar waters, devoid of any assurance of serene passage, appears infinitely more terrifying than remaining anchored. This is the quintessential essence of self-imposed limitation, the deliberate, often subconscious, election to reside within the known, however agonizing, because the dread of the unknown is simply too overwhelming. The genuine challenge lies in grasping that this fear is an intricate construct of our own consciousness, meticulously designed to ensure our safety, but ultimately serving as a gilded prison. It is a potent illusion. The illusion that the known, even when inflicting harm, possesses an inherent superiority in terms of security over the potential for something superior. The mind sabotage, its projection of worst-case scenarios, is its method of maintaining absolute control. However, by discerning the cringe, that visceral reaction to venturing into unfamiliar terrain, we gain a critical insight. This cringe is not an indicator of deficiency. It is a beacon, guiding us toward the very arenas where transformation awaits. It represents the initial step in deconstructing the internal narratives that confine us within our self-erected cage, and in commencing the arduous journey toward authentic self-expression. The subsequent imperative is to actively interrogate these narratives and to cultivate the courage to step beyond the perceived security of our familiar discomfort. 3. The trap of familiar pain. We habitually speak of comfort as a comforting embrace, a soft haven, a space where we feel secure and at ease. And indeed, comfort can be a profound solace. It is the sensation of arriving home after a protracted journey, the warmth of an intimate embrace, the quiet delight of immersing oneself in a good book. But what transpires when this very comfort begins to feel less like a sanctuary and more like an enclosure? What if the very anchors we cling to for security are, in fact, impeding our progress, tethering us away from the life we genuinely aspire to? This is the subtle, often imperceptible snare of familiar suffering. It is the notion that we can become so acclimatized to a particular degree of discontent, so accustomed to a distinct form of hardship, that the prospect of relinquishing it looms more daunting than remaining ensnared. It presents a paradox, does it not? How can something that inflicts pain also feel like comfort? The elucidation lies in our innate human craving for predictability. Our minds are predisposed to discern patterns and eschew surprises. Reflect upon it. When you are acquiring a new skill, it demands considerable cognitive exertion, does it not? You must focus, make determinations, and there is an ever-present possibility of error. Your brain perceives this as fraught with peril. Conversely, When you engage in an action you have performed countless times, such as traversing to your kitchen or navigating a well-trodden route, it becomes almost automatic. Your brain can then afford to relax. This is the potency of familiarity. It is here that familiar pain emerges. Envision a professional engagement that relentlessly saps your vitality. Your supervisor is demanding, the work itself is uninspiring, and you anticipate Monday mornings with dread. It is undeniably painful. Yet, you possess a clear understanding of what to anticipate. You know how to manage your supervisor's temperament, you comprehend how to persevere through the day, and you are assured that at 5 o'clock you can return home. You have established a rhythm, a predictable cadence to your affliction. Now, conceive of severing ties with that employment. Suddenly, an expansive unknown unfolds. You must embark on a new job search, which necessitates crafting resumes, attending interviews, and confronting the potential for rejection. You remain ignorant of the nature of the subsequent work, or whether a new supervisor will prove any more amenable. The sheer exertion, the uncertainty, the sheer risk inherent in such a transition can feel overwhelming. At this juncture, the predictable, even if painful, employment can begin to appear attractive. This is the manifestation of the better the devil you know adage. Our minds frequently deceive us, subtly suggesting that the endeavor of transformation far outweighs the current suffering we endure. It is akin to standing at the precipice of a somber wood. You are cognizant of the arduous and thorn-laden path you currently tread, and you bear the scars of numerous encounters. Yet the thorns are visible. You know their location. The forest stretching before you is shrouded in darkness, and its depths remain unseen. Does it conceal a sun-drenched glade? Or is it teeming with unseen perils beyond your imagination? Your mind, intent on shielding you from unknown dangers, may implore you to remain on the familiar, thorny track. This exemplifies self-imposed limitation. You are the architect of your own confinement, choosing to remain where it hurts because the alternative appears too terrifying. Your mind actively perpetuates this barrier, not out of a desire for your suffering, but from a conviction that it is safeguarding you. This is not indicative of weakness or folly. It is a profoundly ingrained psychological predisposition. The brain, in its pursuit of efficiency and security, can become ensnared in a cyclical pattern. It learns that a specific set of circumstances, however unpleasant, culminates in a predictable outcome, and it defaults to that pattern. It is reminiscent of a deeply etched groove in a phonograph record. The needle consistently returns to it, playing the same melancholic tune, because it represents the path of least resistance. And the true peril? The insidious erosion of our self-regard. When we consistently elect to remain in circumstances that do not nourish us, that deplete our energy, that diminish our sense of self, we are, in essence, communicating to ourselves that we are incapable of achieving anything superior. Each instance we shy away from a challenge, each moment we choose known discomfort over potential unknown, we chip away at our conviction in our own abilities. We begin to think, perhaps this is all I am destined for, or perhaps I simply lack the fortitude to embrace something different. This evolves into a self-perpetuating prophecy. If you harbor the belief that you cannot navigate change, your actions will invariably serve to validate that belief. You will hesitate, you will fabricate justifications, you will unearth reasons why the present moment is not propitious. Consequently, you remain entrenched in your familiar pain, and your self-worth continues its gradual decline. This is the transformation of the cage of comfort into a self-constructed prison. The bars are not wrought of iron, they are fashioned from habit, apprehension, and the comforting illusion of knowing what to expect. Consider the realm of interpersonal relationships. On occasion, individuals remain within relationships that are detrimental. Perhaps there is incessant criticism, a dearth of support, or even emotional neglect. It is painful. It constitutes a form of suffering. Yet, they are acquainted with this individual. They understand how to navigate the disagreements, how to anticipate the moods. The prospect of solitude, of commencing anew, of encountering someone new and having to re-establish trust from its foundations. That represents a formidable unknown. Thus they persist. They opt for the familiar ache over the terrifying prospect of an empty void. Or contemplate an individual who has perpetually harbored aspirations of establishing their own enterprise, yet they occupy a stable, secure position. Their employment does not ignite their passion, but it ensures their financial stability. The notion of relinquishing it and investing their entire savings, of confronting the possibility of failure, of the protracted hours, and immense pressure, it is daunting. Consequently, they keep their dream carefully concealed. They rationalize their decision as responsible, as prudent. Yet, deep within, a quiet melancholy resides, a sense of something absent. They are choosing the solace of their predictable remuneration over the potential joy and fulfillment derived from pursuing their passion. This represents their unconscious construction of their own confining walls. The pain we experience in these scenarios is not invariably dramatic or vociferous. More often, it is a low thrum, a persistent, dull ache to which we become accustomed. It is the sensation of being perpetually slightly unhappy, somewhat unfulfilled, day after day. We grow accustomed to the sensation. And because it is ever present, because it is familiar, it begins to feel normal. It begins to feel like us. This is precisely how self-imposed limitation operates. It is not an external force suppressing you. It is your own internal programming that prioritizes the known over the potential. Your mind, in its endeavor to manage risk and conserve energy, erects these invisible barriers. It assures you, this is secure. This is predictable. Do not deviate from the path you know, even if it is a painful one. The comfort we derive from familiarity, even familiar pain, is so potent because it offers a sense of control. We feel as though we comprehend our predicament, even if that comprehension pertains to how to endure it. What are the specific emotional and psychological mechanisms that render a painful yet familiar situation feel safer than an unknown, yet potentially positive one? Well, a significant component is the brain's reward system. When we encounter something new and uncertain, particularly if it involves potential failure or rejection, our brain releases stress hormones, like cortisol. This triggers our fight or flight response, inducing feelings of anxiety and unease. It is a survival mechanism designed to steer us away from danger. Conversely, when we are in a familiar situation, even a negative one, our brain's stress response is often attenuated because it has learned to manage it. It recognizes the threats and has developed coping strategies, however imperfect. This familiarity diminishes the perceived threat level, making it feel less perilous than the entirely unknown. Furthermore, our identity becomes intertwined with our current circumstances. If you have occupied the same professional role for a decade, you might perceive yourself as a person in that role. If you have been engaged in a difficult relationship for an extended period, your identity may be inextricably linked to the dynamics of that union. To depart signifies stepping away from a facet of who you believe yourself to be. This can be profoundly disorienting. The unknown future may not offer a clear place for your current identity, and that can be a deeply unsettling prospect. Consequently, the mind clings to the familiar identity, even if it is one that engenders pain. And what of the fear of censure? If you venture into something new and it proves unsuccessful, you may worry about the perceptions of others. People might remark, "I told you so," or "Why did you even try?" Remaining within your familiar pain, even if it breeds unhappiness, often means you are circumventing that potential judgment. You are adhering to a course that, while arduous, is socially understood or accepted. The risk of appearing foolish or experiencing public failure can act as a potent deterrent, surpassing the internal inclination for change. How does the act of choosing to remain in familiar pain, even unconsciously, contribute to a decline in self-efficacy and self-worth over time? It is a gradual process, akin to water slowly eroding stone. Each instance you elect not to embrace a risk, not to assert yourself, not to pursue a dream, you reinforce the conviction that you are incapable of doing so. Your internal narrative undergoes a transformation. Rather than "I can accomplish this, though it is difficult," it becomes "I cannot accomplish this. It is too arduous." This persistent self-doubt corrodes your confidence. You cease to trust your own discernment and your own capabilities. You begin to perceive yourself as someone who is simply immobilized, rather than someone who is choosing to remain immobilized. This sense of helplessness is exceedingly detrimental to self-worth. You start to believe that your current reality is a reflection of your inherent limitations, rather than a consequence of your decisions. Imagine a child who is apprehensive about riding a bicycle. Their parents support them, yet the child repeatedly desires to dismount, fearing a fall. If the parents consistently catch them, or if the child never has the opportunity to truly experience the equilibrium and momentum, they will never acquire the skill. They will perpetually believe they cannot ride a bicycle. Their experience of not succeeding has conditioned them to believe in their own inadequacy. Similarly, when we repeatedly opt out of challenging situations, we accumulate a history of non-achievement, and this history forms the bedrock of our self-perception. The snare of familiar pain is one of the most insidious manifestations of self-imposed limitation because it so closely resembles security. It whispers assurances of stability and predictability, while covertly pilfering our courage and our belief in ourselves. The comfort it proffers is the comfort of the known, a predictable, albeit often disagreeable, landscape. Yet, this comfort is a gilded cage. Its bars are forged from our own apprehensions and habits, and the key to its liberation lies not in seeking external rescue, but in recognizing that we ourselves possess that key. Comprehending this snare is the pivotal initial stride. It entails perceiving familiar pain not as an inescapable destiny, but as a choice, however unconscious it may have been. It involves realizing that the safety we perceive in the known is an illusion that exacts a profound toll, our potential, our freedom, and our most authentic selves. The subsequent step, naturally, is to ascertain how to commence loosening those bars even when the prospect of venturing into the bright, uncertain world beyond feels like the most terrifying undertaking imaginable. 4. Seeking external approval. We often conceive of comfort as a sheltering harbor against life's tempests, a warm embrace on a frigid night. Yet, what if that sanctuary is, in truth, a gilded cage, and that haven, a carefully laid snare? For a great many of us, the most intractable bonds are not those imposed by external forces, but those forged within the crucible of our own minds, all in the name of perceived comfort. And among the most potent architects of this self-spun solace is the relentless pursuit of the approbation of others. This yearning to be held in favor is a primal human imperative. From our earliest moments, we instinctively grasp that smiles and commendations bring a sense of well-being, while frowns and censure inflict a palpable distress. This is an entirely natural phenomenon. We are inherently social beings, and the need for belonging is paramount. However, somewhere along the winding path of our development, this innate desire can mutate, twisting into something altogether more consuming. It morphs into a desperate, unceasing performance, a subtle yet unyielding self-imposed constraint. We begin to internalize the insidious belief that our inherent worth, our very security, our right to occupy space in the world, hinges upon the perpetual approval of every other soul. Consider this introspectively. When you are poised to articulate a thought or to embark upon an action, do you not, for a fleeting instant, pause and ponder their potential reaction? What will your friends deem acceptable? Your family? Your colleagues? Your superiors? That infinitesimal hesitation, that tremor of concern regarding external judgment, is the initial tug of the invisible chain. The comfort we instinctively seek in that precise moment is the solace derived from evading disapproval, from remaining demurely ensconced within the accepted boundaries of convention. The potential disquietude we are so assiduously sidestepping is the piercing sting of criticism, the chilling void of rejection, or even the mere awkwardness of failing to conform. This apprehension of a negative repercussion, however negligible it may appear, possesses an astonishing power to sculpt our choices. It whispers insidious directives: maintain equilibrium. Do not attract undue attention. Do not deviate from the norm. Simply be agreeable. Concede. And we invariably heed its call. We gravitate towards the path of least resistance, the route that promises the comforting illusion of safety through universal acquiescence. This dynamic engenders a veritable cage of performance. We commence the intricate construction of a persona, a meticulously curated rendition of ourselves, designed to elicit those coveted nods of affirmation. We don the guise of a mask, revealing only that which we surmise others wish to behold. We may affect joviality when our hearts are heavy, feign accord when our spirits seethe with dissent, or project an air of unflinching confidence when consumed by terror. This is not merely the act of presenting a stoic facade in the face of adversity. It is the perpetual existence behind that very mask, day in and day out. The sheer exertion required to sustain this elaborate artifice is monumental. It resembles the precarious act of juggling a dozen fragile orbs, perpetually consumed by the dread of a single misstep. This ceaseless performance is profoundly enervating. It siphons our vitality and, more critically, it severs our connection to our authentic selves. We become so consumed by the external gaze that we lose touch with our own internal compass, our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own deepest desires. The solace derived from the acceptance of others transmutes into an unyielding prison, immuring our true essence, unseen and unexpressed. This relentless quest for universal approval is, to be frank, an unattainable chimera. It is a Sisyphean endeavor, a treadmill that accelerates relentlessly, leading ultimately to stagnation. It is an impossibility to be universally esteemed. Each of us is a singular entity, endowed with our own unique tapestry of thoughts, sentiments, eccentricities, and indeed, our own inherent imperfections. To endeavor to placate every individual is to attempt the impossible feat of embodying a multitude of beings simultaneously, and, in so doing, one risks becoming no one for oneself. Envision the futility of endeavoring to be the life of the party for the introverts, the silent confidant for the boisterous, the intrepid explorer for the homebodies, and the sagacious counselor for the audacious risk-takers. Such an undertaking is a guaranteed harbinger of burnout and a profound forfeiture of identity. The transcript poignantly reminds us, it's natural and normal not to be liked or approved of by everyone. To embrace this fundamental truth is not an admission of failure, but a testament to profound maturity and self-awareness. What, precisely, do we endeavor to conceal when we strive for universal acclaim? We are, in essence, hiding our baby. This metaphor resonates with profound depth. Our baby represents our core essence, our most tender, authentic, and at times, untidy truth. It encompasses our sorrows, our anxieties, our unmet longings, our unconventional notions. These are the facets of our being that may not always elicit effusive smiles and resounding applause. The transcript speaks of a no-sadness cult, and it is precisely this pursuit of external validation that cultivates such an environment. We learn to suppress anything that might be perceived as negative or unappealing, anything that carries the potential risk of disapproval. We learn to shield our vulnerability, for vulnerability, we fear, may be met with judgment. Yet, in concealing our baby, we rob ourselves of the profound opportunity for genuine human connection. True connection blossoms when we are truly seen, in all our imperfect glory. When we present only the polished, approved version of ourselves, we erect an insurmountable barrier, preventing others from truly knowing us, and crucially, preventing ourselves from experiencing the profound solace of being loved and accepted for who we authentically are. This perpetual dependence on external affirmation also serves as a perilous diversion from the vital cultivation of our own intrinsic Sense of worth. When we delegate the responsibility of our validation, we effectively surrender the reins of our self-esteem to the capricious whims of others. Our perception of value becomes a fluctuating commodity, subject to the vagaries of the latest encomium or censure. We become akin to a fragile sapling, dependent solely on the external radiance of the sun rather than a robust tree with deep roots drawing sustenance from the very earth. We conveniently forget that our worth is an intrinsic endowment. It is not a prize to be won through accolades, nor a gift to be bestowed by popularity. It simply is. The transcript articulates this truth with stark clarity. You're worthy. This declaration is not conditional, it is a foundational verity. However, when we are perpetually engaged in the pursuit of external validation, our gaze is invariably cast outward, seeking corroboration of this truth rather than turning inward to discover and nurture it. This makes us profoundly fragile, susceptible to the ever-shifting sands of public opinion. Let us delve more deeply into the mechanics of how this apprehension of specific negative reactions functions as a comfort mechanism. Picture Sarah, a graphic designer of considerable talent, whose fervent aspiration is to establish her own freelance enterprise. She excels in her craft, possesses a lucid vision, and harbors an unshakable conviction in her capacity for success. Yet, the prospect of relinquishing the assured stability of her lucrative corporate position plunges her into a profound state of trepidation. It is not solely the specter of financial uncertainty, though that is undeniably a component. It is the imagined dialogues that plague her, the anxious inquiries of her parents regarding fiscal security, the skeptical eyebrows of her companions at her audacious venture, the dismissive pronouncements of her employer regarding her departure from a secure position. These conjured responses, these potential criticisms, manifest as tangible threats. The solace she craves is the comfort derived from circumventing these unwelcome interactions. Consequently, she remains tethered to her current circumstances. She rationalizes her inertia by proclaiming it the prudent, the responsible course of action. She assures herself that she is not yet adequately prepared, that she requires more experience, a larger financial cushion. However, these are merely stratagems of self-deception. The verity is that she remains incarcerated by the comfort of evading imagined disapproval, the comfort of reciting within the familiar, albeit unfulfilling, reality. This self-imposed limitation, the conscious choice to remain stagnant out of apprehension of judgment, effectively stifles her latent potential. The tangible manifestations of this fear's dominion over her choices are both subtle and profound. She deliberately refrains from alluding to her freelance aspirations at her workplace. She downplays her design prowess in social engagements, and she dedicates her evenings to perusing online job portals for analogous corporate roles, thereby reinforcing the notion that this singular trajectory is her sole recourse. Consider another illustrative instance, this time within the realm of interpersonal relationships. Mark is a man of inherent kindness and profound thoughtfulness, yet he has, with unsettling frequency, found himself ensnared in romantic partnerships where he feels as though he is treading on fragile ice. He has navigated relationships with partners who exhibit a critical disposition, leaving him with the persistent sensation of never quite measuring up. He has honed the skill of anticipating their moods, of uttering the precisely calibrated phrases, of assiduously avoiding any subject that might precipitate discord or censure. The comfort he derives in these situations is the solace of predictability, of understanding the unspoken rules of engagement, even when those rules are profoundly constricting. He is so consumed by the fear of displeasing his partner, of confronting their ire or disappointment, that he systematically suppresses his own authentic needs and convictions. He might profess agreement with a sentiment he fundamentally disavows, or feign enjoyment of an activity that elicits no pleasure, all in a desperate bid to preserve a precarious equilibrium. The internal toll exacted by this perpetual compromise is staggering. He experiences a burgeoning sense of resentment, a gnawing awareness of his own inauthenticity. He is trading the promise of genuine connection for a hollow facsimile, all because the discomfort of confronting potential conflict appears more formidable than the agony of self-annihilation. This represents a quintessential example of self-imposed limitation. He curtails his capacity for a truly flourishing relationship by prioritizing the comfort of conflict avoidance over the potential for authentic self-expression and the cultivation of profound intimacy. In the professional sphere, the insatiable craving for external validation can propel us towards the pursuit of titles and advancements that bear no resonance with our innate passions. We may find ourselves undertaking projects that are spiritually desiccating solely because they are perceived as prestigious or because they will impress our superiors. We might remain ensconced in a dissatisfying occupation for years, rationalizing our inertia with the mantra of good for the resume or the weight of familial expectations. The internal cost incurred in such scenarios is the slow, insidious attrition of our spirit, the gradual dimming of our creative luminescence. We are engaged in a Faustian bargain, sacrificing our genuine aspirations for the ephemeral glow of external recognition. This is a direct manifestation of the cage of comfort. The seductive allure of perceived stability and societal endorsement blinds us to the boundless possibilities of a more meaningful and authentic professional trajectory. Even within the intimate sphere of personal style, or the boundless landscape of creative expression, the specter of judgment can exert a powerful restraining influence. We may recoil from donning particular garments, from immersing ourselves in certain musical genres, or from pursuing specific hobbies simply because they are not deemed fashionable or acceptable by the social circles we aspire to impress. We become paralyzed by the fear of experimentation, of articulating our unique aesthetic sensibilities, lest we invite ridicule or ostracization. This self-imposed limitation actively thwarts our capacity to discover and celebrate our individuality, to derive unadulterated joy from the act of self-expression. Ultimately, the comfort we apprehend in the ceaseless pursuit of external approval is nothing more than an elaborate illusion. It is a transient palliative that serves to deflect us from confronting the deeper, more insidious wounds of self-doubt and pervasive insecurity. It is a sophisticated stratagem for circumventing the essential, albeit uncomfortable, journey of self-discovery and authentic articulation. Yet, the irrefutable truth remains. The only approbation that possesses any enduring significance is that which originates from within. When we cultivate the fortitude to heed our inner voice, to ascribe profound value to our unique perspective, and to embrace our authentic selves, even in moments when they fail to garner universal applause, we commence the arduous process of liberation. We dismantle the cage of comfort, not by seeking refuge in a new, albeit more opulently adorned, confinement, but by bravely venturing into the uncharted territory where true freedom and profound fulfillment await. Having meticulously examined the beguiling allure of external validation and the constricting confines it inexorably erects, we now possess a profound understanding of the deeply ingrained nature of this pervasive pattern. But what transpires when this outward fixation on the opinions of others begins to erode our very conception of self, compelling us to interrogate not merely what others perceive of us, but who we authentically are beneath the meticulously constructed layers of our performance? This inquiry serves as our gateway to the subsequent chain within our comfort zone, the illusion of control. Chapter 2. The Path to Freedom. 1. Embracing True Self. We often expend prodigious energy contorting ourselves into shapes we imagine others desire, or into archetypes we deem ourselves beholden to, thereby neglecting the quiet, unwavering verity. Our intrinsic selves are already more than sufficient. Beneath the accumulated strata we have meticulously constructed the judiciously chosen words, the artfully curated smiles, the lauded accomplishments, even the aspects we hold in shame lies an irreducible core. This true self is not a grand project awaiting ultimate perfection, but a profound presence awaiting recognition. It is imbued with an intrinsic value, not predicated on deeds or possessions, but on the sheer fact of its existence. This is a fundamental truth that the cage of comfort assiduously works to obscure. It whispers that our worth is conditional, contingent upon performance, achievement, or conformity. But this is a profound falsehood. The still, quiet you, the one who experiences emotions with depth, who falters occasionally, who harbors dreams whispered only in the deepest darkness that you is precious beyond measure. Consider this. When you are unequivocally yourself, unburdened by the specter of making a favorable impression or the dread of judgment, a palpable lightness descends, does it not? A profound sense of ease. This is because the ego, that ceaseless architect of our projected image, exacts an immense toll. It is akin to the precarious juggling of a dozen fragile glass spheres while traversing a tightrope. The ego is perpetual exertion. It is the gnawing tension of maintaining a facade, the insidious fear of exposure, of being found out, of someone discovering the real you and deeming it wanting. This relentless performance is the very armature of the cage. It ensnares us, not with physical constraints, but with the exhausting burden of pretense. Conversely, when we permit ourselves to be seen as we are, with all our perceived imperfections, a different order of energy is unleashed. This is not an endorsement of indolence or negligence. Rather, it is the liberation of the immense energy previously consumed in upholding the charade. It is the chasm between the strained grimace of someone feigning cheerfulness at an unwelcome gathering and the unadulterated, relaxed beam of a child who has stumbled upon a marvel. The latter is effortless, unforced. And while the act of stepping from the cage of performance may initially feel fraught with terror akin to stepping onto an unscripted stage, the resultant freedom is sublime. It is the freedom to simply be, unburdened by the incessant imperative to prove oneself. This leads us to the concept of vulnerability, so often erroneously conflated with weakness. In truth, vulnerability is the very threshold to authenticity. It is the courageous embrace of our full emotional spectrum, including sorrow, fear, doubt, and even anger, without the immediate impulse to suppress or conceal them. Recall the metaphor of concealing the infant. We guard our most tender selves, our babies, with ferocious intensity, fearing that exposure will invite hurt, judgment, or rejection. Yet often, this fear is merely a bluff. The very aspects we strive to conceal, our moments of profound sadness, our feelings of inadequacy, our chaotic emotions, are the very threads that weave us into the tapestry of humanity. When we dare to unveil these facets, not as defects to be rectified, but as elements to be acknowledged, we dismantle the power of shame. It is akin to opening a window in a stifling room. Fresh air floods in, and the oppressive atmosphere dissipates. These raw, unvarnished fragments of our being are not flaws, they are the irrefutable testament to our shared humanity. Why, then, does it prove so arduous to embrace this inherent worth and inhabit our authentic selves? The answer lies within the cults that have shaped our upbringing. These are not cults of ceremonial robes and clandestine salutations, but rather potent, pervasive belief systems that insinuate the unacceptability of our true selves. There is the no sadness cult, which instills the notion that any display of sorrow signifies failure. There is the fearless cult, which mandates that the courageous never betray fear. Countless others exist, all subtly suggesting that the person you are in solitude, with your defenses lowered, is fundamentally deficient. These cults persuade us that our natural inclinations, our genuine sentiments, our unique modes of existence, are erroneous. They foster the illusion that our true selves are inherently flawed, and that acceptance is attainable only through the adoption of a mask. This ceaseless pressure to conform to these invisible cultic tenets is a primary impetus for self-imposed limitations. We constrain ourselves because we have been indoctrinated to believe that our authentic selves are inherently restricted. Contemplate the sensation of shame. We experience shame when we harbor the conviction that we are fundamentally flawed or morally compromised. This shame is an formidable force that perpetuates our confinement within the cage. It whispers, do not allow them to witness that aspect of yourself. They will reject you. But here lies a pivotal revelation, one capable of shattering the very foundations of shame. Whatever you perceive as most personal is, in fact, most universal. Your deepest insecurities, your most mortifying episodes, your most intimate fears, the probability is immense that millions of others have traversed identical emotional landscapes. The isolation you feel in your struggle is frequently an illusion conjured by the cage. When we summon the courage to express our authentic selves, we often discover not rejection, but recognition. We find connection. That resonant moment when another utters, "I feel that way too," is an act of profound liberation. It affirms that we are not solitary, and that our perceived flaws are, in reality, the very attributes that render us relatable and human. This shared experience of vulnerability serves as a potent antidote to the isolating grip of self-imposed limitations. The apprehension of being perceived as imperfect or vulnerable forms the bedrock upon which the cage of comfort is meticulously constructed. Envision an individual gripped by a paralyzing dread of public speaking. They might rationalize, "I am simply not adept at it. It is preferable for me to remain silent." This is a self-imposed limitation, artfully disguised as a pragmatic assessment. The true apprehension, however, lies in the vulnerability of standing exposed, of potentially misplacing words, of enduring scrutiny. This fear of judgment, of falling short, is so potent that it compels them to maintain silence, to reside within the secure, albeit constricting, confines of their comfort zone. The cage in this instance is the silence, the missed opportunities, the unarticulated ideas, all sustained by the fear of what might transpire should they dare to step forth and be imperfectly themselves. They opt for the predictable discomfort of silence over the unpredictable, yet potentially exhilarating, experience of articulating their truth, however imperfectly. What are the tangible advantages of relinquishing this performance-driven ego and embracing our genuine, unvarnished selves? Beyond the immediate emotional succor of ceasing to feign, profound transformations unfold. When we cease expending energy on maintaining a facade, that energy becomes available for the vibrant act of living. We become more present in our relationships, capable of genuine connection rather than performative interaction. Our creativity flourishes, uninhibited by the censorious fear of judgment. We cultivate greater resilience, for when challenges arise, we confront them as our authentic selves, rather than as fragile personas, poised to shatter. A profound sense of integrity settles in a feeling of wholeness and alignment. This is not about achieving a state of flawlessness, but about becoming a complete individual, one who acknowledges and integrates all facets of their being. It is a transition from a posture of perpetual defense to one of open, engaged participation with life. If our true self possesses inherent worth, why then do the majority find it so arduous to embrace and embody it? The forces perpetuating this difficulty are manifold. Internally, our own minds, conditioned by years of self-recrimination and apprehension, actively resist alteration. The familiar ache of our present reality, however uncomfortable, feels more secure than the uncharted territory of authenticity. Our ego, in its desperate bid to shield itself from perceived threats of rejection or inadequacy, will conjure any pretext to evade vulnerability. Externally, societal conditioning exerts a formidable influence. From our earliest years, we absorb messages delineating acceptable from unacceptable behaviors. We learn to prioritize external validation, grades, promotions, accolades over internal self-approval. The media ceaselessly bombards us with idealized representations of lives and bodies, fostering a perpetual sense of deficiency. These internalized beliefs and external pressures create a formidable bulwark against the simple acceptance of ourselves as we are. We are taught to pursue an external benchmark of good enough rather than recognizing that we are already inherently so. The journey of embracing our true self is not a fixed destination, but a continuous process of unfolding. As we commence the shedding of learned fears and societal expectations, we discover that the grandest freedom resides not in the absence of challenges, but in the courage to confront them as our authentic selves. This newfound courage, however, frequently brings us face to face with the very unknowns we have assiduously avoided. The ensuing step, therefore, is not to retreat, but to lean into that uncertainty, recognizing it as the fertile ground upon which true growth and enduring freedom are cultivated. 2. Breaking societal norms. Society, in its vast, intricate weave, often presents us with a blueprint for living. It whispers and sometimes shouts about what success looks like, how we should love, what we're allowed to feel, and who we are meant to be. These are not just gentle suggestions. They are deeply ingrained directives, almost like silent laws we're expected to follow. Think of them as cults we are born into, not by choice, but by circumstance. We are raised within the comforting, yet often constricting, walls of these societal norms. We learn to play by their rules, to wear the right masks, and to echo the approved thoughts. This constant pressure to conform, to fit into a mold that was never quite shaped for our unique selves, becomes one of the most potent forms of self-imposed limitation. These internalized cults dictate what is deemed good and bad, acceptable and unacceptable. They sculpt our fears, particularly the dread of divergence, of scrutiny, of exclusion. The yearning for universal acclaim transforms into a relentless engine, propelling us to conceal any facet of ourselves that might stray from the prevailing current. We fret about being branded unattractive if we fail to meet specific aesthetic benchmarks, eccentric if our inclinations deviate from the common, or a failure if our life trajectory veers from the prescribed course. This apprehension of judgment forms a formidable cage, and we willingly confine ourselves within its illusory sanctuary. And what a profound illusion it is! Adherence to these societal expectations offers a semblance of security. It feels predictable, tranquil. We comprehend what is demanded, and we know how to deliver. We are spared the confrontation with the boundless, uncharted expanse of our own individuality. Yet, this comfort is a gilded prison. It shields us, undeniably, but it also diminishes us. It impedes our exploration of the full spectrum of our being, our discovery of genuine passions, and our attainment of a life that truly resonates with our soul. The price of this perceived safety is our liberty, our authenticity, and our capacity for profound growth. Consider the prodigious effort expended in sustaining this performance. The ceaseless vigilance over our pronouncements, our actions, our very musings to ensure their alignment with societal dictates of correctness. This is the essence of what I mean when I articulate ego equals effort. The ego, in its insatiable quest for acceptance and approval, labors ceaselessly to uphold this socially fabricated facade. It is akin to an actor upon a stage, perpetually embodying a role, perpetually striving for an impeccable performance. This unremitting scrutiny is profoundly draining. It saps our vitality and diverts us from our authentic selves. We become so engrossed in the endeavor of appearing a certain way that we lose touch with who we fundamentally are. However, here lies the liberating verity. The antithesis of this relentless exertion is authenticity. When we cease striving to meet external expectations and instead embrace our inherent selves, imperfections and all, a profound serenity descends. It is akin to finally dismounting a treadmill set at an unsustainable velocity. The equation ego equals effort encapsulates the struggle of maintaining a facade, of wearing a mask that is both burdensome and discomforting. True liberation, true authenticity, is its polar opposite. It is the ease that arises from shedding that mask, from conceding that perfection is not an obligation, that our vulnerabilities are not weaknesses but integral threads in our unique human tapestry. Reflect upon what we often sequester from the world's gaze. We might suppress our creative impulses if they appear impractical. We might stifle our emotions if society admonishes us to be strong and never betray sorrow. We might conceal our singular aspirations if they diverge from the conventional definition of success. This is akin to hiding a precious infant, our true, vulnerable, authentic self. We harbor the fear that if we unveil this infant, it will be subjected to judgment, mockery, or rejection. This dread, this self-imposed constraint, bars us from truly living. To transcend societal strictures necessitates a courageous decision to reveal that infant, to shield it, and to allow it to radiate, even if the external world regards it with a degree of uncertainty. This is where the Lion King allegory proves instructive. Recall Simba, the young prince, who was burdened with the accusation of his father's demise and consequently fled, obscuring his true identity. He dwelled in exile, suppressing his essence, for an extended period. He succumbed to the narrative that society, or at least, Scar's distorted rendition of it, had imposed upon him. It was only upon confronting his past, facing his anxieties, and embracing his true self, his infant, that he could reclaim his rightful dominion and govern with unvarnished authenticity. He had to extricate himself from the narrative of shame and guilt that had been foisted upon him. The apprehension that compels us to conform, to conceal our infant, is frequently rooted in a perception of unique deficiency. We observe others and presume they possess complete mastery, that they are untouched by the same insecurities. We deem our personal struggles as precisely that, personal and perhaps ignominious. Yet, this is a grand delusion. The truth is, whatever you perceive as most intimate and singular about your insecurity is likely the most universally shared human experience. The desire for acceptance, the fear of censure, the sensation of inadequacy, these are common to nearly everyone. We are all, in essence, concealing our own infants in myriad ways. Recognizing this universality represents a profound stride. It enables us to perceive that the pressure to conform is not an indictment of our own shortcomings, but a collective human inclination. When we dare to be authentic, to reveal our unvarnished selves, we frequently discover that others forge deeper connections with us. They discern their own concealed struggles mirrored in our vulnerability. This shared vulnerability is not a frailty. It is the very bedrock of genuine human communion and true freedom. It stands in opposition to the no-sadness cult or the fearless cult. It is an embrace of the complete human panorama, the radiant and the disheveled. So, how do we commence our liberation from these deeply entrenched societal cults that have become our self-imposed limitations? It commences with an acute awareness. We must become interrogators of our own consciousness, detecting the subtle murmurings of should and must that do not genuinely originate from within. Pose the question to yourself: who apprised me that this is the correct mode of existence? Does this conviction serve me, or does it impede my progress? Frequently, we shall ascertain that these directives stem from external sources, not from our intrinsic truth. The initial phases of unlearning are not characterized by grand gestures, but by modest, persistent acts of defiance against our own conditioned responses. Perhaps it involves voicing an opinion when we would typically remain silent for fear of disapproval. It might entail selecting a course that ignites our passion, even if it deviates from the prudent path society anticipates. It could be as elementary as permitting ourselves to experience a suppressed emotion rather than suppressing it to maintain an outward composure. Each instance where authenticity is chosen over conformity chips away at the ramparts of your confinement. This undertaking is not about a wholesale rejection of society, but about discerning which of its pronouncements genuinely resonate with our personal values and which are merely reverberations of external expectations that curtail our growth. It is about reclaiming our volition and defining what normal signifies for you. It is about comprehending that the exertion required to sustain an artificial self far eclipses the fortitude needed to be genuine. When we cease performing for universal approbation and commence living from our authentic core, we begin to divest ourselves of the burdensome mask. We permit our true infant, our unique aptitudes, our genuine sentiments, our singular spirit to emerge and be observed. This act of courage is not solely about personal emancipation. It is about contributing your distinctive luminescence to the world, a contribution that conformity can never provide. It is about realizing that the most profound freedom arises not from fitting in, but from daring to distinguish oneself. Embracing your totality and trusting that your authentic trajectory, though perhaps less trodden, is the one that leads to genuine fulfillment. Once we commence dismantling the external and internal pressures of societal conventions, we frequently find ourselves poised at a precipice, confronting the vast, uncharted expanse of our own true selves. This voyage into the unknown, while exhilarating, can also be daunting. The subsequent step, therefore, is to comprehend how to navigate this newfound space, not by seeking external validation, but by cultivating an unshakable inner compass. This leads us to the crucial skill of embracing the unknown and cultivating inner certainty. 3. Facing our fears. The cage of comfort, a master illusionist, whispers promises of safety, predictability, and ease. Yet, a closer examination often reveals that what appears to be a sturdy bulwark is, in truth, a fragile construct of our own making, a gilded prison that holds us captive. And the bars of this confinement? They are forged from fear. We are conditioned to revere fear, to perceive it as an infallible sentinel, a signal to retreat, to exercise caution. Indeed, certain primal fears are indispensable for survival. However, the anxieties that stunt our growth, that murmur you cannot, that paralyze us when opportunity beckons, these are often of a different ilk. They are not alarms, they are stratagems. Consider your deepest apprehensions, those that churn your stomach and prickle your palms. Are they rooted in a clear, imminent, and undeniable peril? Or are they akin to the specters we conjure in darkness, monstrous forms that diminish and dissolve when the light is finally cast upon them? Many of our fears are precisely that, deceptions. They are amplified narratives spun by our minds to ensure we remain tethered to the familiar, even if that familiarity is tinged with a dull ache of regret. They are the monsters in the closet that wield no power save that which we grant them. Herein lies the profound revelation of our self-imposed limitations. The cage we inhabit is not sealed from without. The key rests within our grasp. When we feel that paralyzing dread of venturing into the new, of articulating our truth, of pursuing a dream, we are, in essence, confronting the fear of abandoning the known. It is the fear of the unknown, undoubtedly, but more acutely, it is the dread of the discomfort that change may usher in. Our minds, relentless in their pursuit of perceived security, persuade us that the familiar pain, the accustomed ache, is somehow preferable to the uncertainty of what lies beyond the bars. The cage, though restrictive, is comprehensible. The world outside? It is a vast, uncharted expanse, a prospect that can indeed be terrifying. But here is the unspoken truth. The cage stands ajar. The choice to remain or to depart is unequivocally ours. The apprehension of leaving is frequently a far greater, far more potent impediment than the reality of stepping forth. This is the juncture at which we must learn to lean into the cringe. The phrase itself may strike one as peculiar, perhaps even a touch mortifying. Yet, ponder this, what elicits our cringe? It is often those moments when we feel exposed, vulnerable, or adrift. It is when we attempt something novel, risk awkwardness, or reveal a facet of ourselves we typically conceal. These are precisely the instances that signify we are probing the boundaries of our comfort zone. These are the crucibles of growth. If something causes you to cringe, it is a potent indicator that you stand on the precipice of expanding your world. Rather than recoil, endeavor to lean in. Embrace the awkwardness. Acknowledge the discomfort. It is not a harbinger of failure, it is a testament to progress. It is within these discomfiting, cringe-inducing moments that we often unearth the solutions we have sought, the breakthroughs we desperately require. One of the most formidable self-imposed limitations we harbor is the dread of judgment. We agonize over the opinions of others. Will they mock? Will they censure? Will they perceive our imperfections? This fear can be so pervasive that it stifles our voices, dims our luminescence, and compels us to play small. We erect elaborate defenses, don masks, and meticulously craft an image to ward off this perceived threat. But what if we were to shift our perspective? What if we considered the converse, the fear of regret? The apprehension of judgment is often ephemeral. A fleeting moment of unease, a passing glance, a harsh word, these sting, but they typically recede. The fear of regret, however, is a slow, insidious poison. It is the knowing what if that can plague us for years, even decades. It is the silent sorrow of a life unlived, of dreams deferred, of potential left dormant, all because we hesitated to step beyond our comfort zone and confront our fears. The transient discomfort of speaking your truth, of taking that leap, of embodying your authentic self, is a far lesser price to pay than the lifelong burden of regret. This brings us to a fundamental redefinition. Vulnerability is not synonymous with weakness. Society has frequently indoctrinated us to equate vulnerability with fragility, with susceptibility to attack, with an inherent breakability. We are exhorted to be strong, stoic, and self-reliant. But this is a perilous misconception. True fortitude resides not in the absence of vulnerability, but in the courage to embrace it. Reflect upon it. What truly binds us as human beings? It is our shared imperfections, our struggles, our unvarnished selves. When we dare to be vulnerable, when we permit ourselves to be seen, flaws and all, we cultivate genuine connection. We reveal our humanity, our relatability, our authenticity. This is not a deficiency, it is a profound act of bravery. It demands immense courage to shed the personas we adopt, to confess our fears, to lay bare our true hearts, even when the prospect feels daunting. It is here that true liberation is discovered, in the space where we no longer fear being seen, where we accept ourselves and in doing so grant others permission to accept us as well. Now, let us approach this pragmatically. To truly confront our fears, we must ascertain what they are endeavoring to safeguard. What is the core truth, the tender desire, or the essential element of ourselves that our fear is keeping concealed? Is it a yearning for affection, for acknowledgement, for creative expression, for a life imbued with purpose? Frequently, our fear acts as a vigilant, albeit misguided, guardian of something precious. It is as if we are sequestering a cherished infant, a vital aspect of our authentic selves, in the deepest recess of a room, convinced the world will inflict harm. Yet, by hiding this infant, we deny it the illumination, the sustenance, and the opportunity to flourish and be cherished. What is this infant for you? What is the indispensable facet of your genuine being that your fear seeks to shield and in doing so is actually suffocating? Consider this. If your current mode of existence remaining within the confines of your comfort zone, eschewing anything that provokes your fear is inflicting significant distress, what is the actual risk of embracing the discomfort your fear presents? Our minds possess an extraordinary capacity for exaggerating potential negative outcomes. We conjure worst-case scenarios that are far more dramatic and devastating than reality typically delivers. Take a moment to meticulously analyze this. What is the absolute worst that could realistically transpire if you took that small step, made that phone call, pursued that concept, or articulated that truth? How does your mind amplify this risk, transforming it into an insurmountable precipice when it is more likely a manageable incline? Frequently, the perceived risk of stepping forth is a distorted, fear-fueled phantasm. And how may we reframe the embarrassment or cringe that often accompanies the confrontation of fear? Instead of interpreting it as evidence of our wrongdoing or inadequacy, let us regard it as a sign of our expansion. Each time you experience that flush of awkwardness, that flicker of self-consciousness, it is a signal. It signifies that you are extending your boundaries. You are venturing into uncharted territory. You are stretching yourself beyond your habitual limitations. This sensation, this cringe, is not a mark of failure. It is the unmistakable emblem of growth. It is the growing pains of becoming more fully yourself. The trajectory toward freedom is not predicated on the eradication of fear. That is an unattainable and, frankly, undesirable objective. Life would be profoundly monotonous and stagnant without the exhilaration and challenge that fear can occasionally impart. The path to freedom lies in comprehending fear for what it frequently is, a potent, yet ultimately surmountable, self-imposed limitation. It is in recognizing that the narratives we weave about our incapacities are often precisely that narratives, and the most liberating act we can perform is to commence the composition of a new narrative, one where courage triumphs over comfort, and where our authentic selves are at last permitted to radiate. Having acknowledged that fear is often a self-imposed illusion designed to perpetuate our entrapment, and that the pursuit of freedom necessitates our active engagement with it, the subsequent pivotal step is to comprehend how to dismantle the mental constructs that fuel these anxieties. This leads us to an exploration of the potent influence of our internal dialogue and the stories we recount to ourselves, which are frequently the very architects of our confinement. 4. Finding strength in vulnerability, the gilded cage of comfort. We construct it, meticulously and often unconsciously, brick by painstaking brick. Its interior is swathed in the plush velvets of familiarity, its atmosphere lulled by the predictable cadence of our days. And at its heart, a primal, frequently unacknowledged, yearning for protection. Protection from what, precisely? From the sharp barb of judgment, the biting frost of rejection, the knowing dread that should our true selves be laid bare, they would find no favor. This ceaseless, silent endeavor to sheath our innermost essence, to present a burnished, palatable facade to the world, forms the very bedrock of our self-imposed limitations. It is the spectral barrier that keeps us secure, yes, but also profoundly isolated. Consider this. When we equate any flicker of struggle, any tremor of uncertainty, with a fundamental weakness, we are, in essence, decreeing that our inherent worth is inextricably bound to our flawlessness. We learn to don masks, to enact a semblance of strength that is both brittle and hollow. We become virtuosos of the stoic nod, the dismissive flourish of a hand when asked of our well-being. Fine, we profess, even as our inner landscapes churn with tempestuous anxiety or our hearts ache with the profound weight of sorrow. This is not fortitude. It is a masterfully orchestrated defense, a stratagem to evade the perceived peril of genuine visibility. And the price? The cost is staggering. It is the perpetual vigilance, the soul-wearying labor of maintaining a facade, and the deep, disquieting conviction that no one truly apprehends us. This unending performance is a potent manifestation of self-imposed constraint, a narrative we relentlessly whisper to ourselves. I must be perfect to merit love. We are prone to ensnare ourselves in the fallacy that true strength lies in the absolute absence of cracks. We are schooled, through countless subtle transmissions, that to be strong is to be impervious, to be unruffled, to possess an unshakable composure. This is a perilous myth. Contemplate a stone, flawlessly smooth and unmarked. It may possess an imposing beauty, but it is also rigid, susceptible to shattering under duress. Genuine strength, the kind that endures, the kind that allows for supple yielding without succumbing to fracture, arises not from the absence of emotion, but from the audacious courage to experience it. It is the resilience that is forged when we acknowledge our fear, our sorrow, our ire, and rather than suppressing them or feigning their non-existence, we grant ourselves the grace to feel them. Herein lies the emergence of vulnerability, not as a testament to frailty, but as the very font of our most profound power. When we permit ourselves to be vulnerable, a remarkable metamorphosis occurs. The armor is shed, the pretense dissolves. We might confess, I am truly apprehensive about this, or I lack the means to navigate this, or even, I have erred. This act of candor, of unveiling our imperfect, human selves, is disarmingly potent. It is akin to opening a window in a stifling chamber, admitting a rush of invigorating air. And within that fresh current, connection can unfurl. When we dare to expose our struggles, we often discover that those around us experience a profound sense of recognition. They perceive a reflection of themselves in our honesty. This is the alchemy of empathy. It is the dawning comprehension that our experiences are not solitary. What we may have perceived as a singular, shameful failing is, in reality, a shared human odyssey. This common humanity, tempered in the crucible of vulnerability, is one of the most formidable strengths we can possess. It whispers, "I am not adrift in my suffering, I am woven into a community." Our perceived imperfections, those very facets we strive so desperately to conceal, are frequently the very essence of our uniqueness and our capacity for resonance. Recall the infant analogy we have previously explored, that unvarnished, unconditioned self, inherently deserving and complete. When we endeavor to expunge our imperfections, to sculpt a flawless, curated iteration of ourselves, we are, in essence, repudiating fragments of that original, worthy self. We are attempting to contort ourselves into a mold that is alien to our being, and that exertion is intrinsically disempowering. To embrace vulnerability is to accept our totality, the aspects we cherish, and those we lament. It is to gaze upon the grubby, chaotic, authentic contours of our lives and declare, "This is I." It is a surrender of the compulsion for an Instagram filter on our existence, an embrace of the unedited, genuine version. This acceptance is not a concession, it is the bedrock of authentic self-regard. It is the quiet assurance that blossoms from the profound understanding of being sufficient, precisely as you are. The dread of vulnerability stands as a formidable architect of the cage of comfort. It perpetuates insidious narratives designed to diminish and secure us. It insinuates that admitting our lack of definitive answers will render us incompetent. It suggests that articulating our emotions will expose us as weak and easily susceptible to manipulation. It warns that divulging our deepest desires and aspirations will invite derision and disappointment. These are the mental constructs that self-imposed limitations spin, conjuring a compelling illusion of peril around anything that necessitates our openness and exposure. This fear actively fortifies the cage by persuading us that the familiar ache of concealment is preferable to the terrifying uncertainty of revealing our authentic selves. The mind becomes remarkably adept at fabricating justifications for inertia, framing the status quo, however painful, as the sole viable option for safety. It is a ceaseless internal discourse that reinforces the conviction that our current constraints are indispensable for survival, rather than impediments to growth. As we probe the inner workings of this apprehension, we begin to discern its deeply ingrained nature. Many of us were nurtured in environments where emotional expression was discouraged, or where missteps were met with acrimonious censure. We internalized the notion that certain emotions were undesirable or unacceptable, and that their display constituted a risk. This conditioning cultivates a profound, underlying belief system that can persist into adulthood, shaping our relationships, our careers, and our overarching sense of self. The narrative solidifies. If I reveal my sadness, I will be perceived as broken. If I confess my anger, I will be deemed aggressive. If I articulate my fear, I will be exploited. These are potent self-imposed limitations, woven from the fabric of past experiences and amplified by the mind's protective mechanisms. The mind, in its quest to avert future injury, confines us to a present that, while familiar, is nonetheless fraught with pain. But what if the inverse held true? What if our perceived frailties were, in fact, our most formidable strengths in disguise? Scientific inquiry is beginning to corroborate what sagacious individuals have understood for millennia. Vulnerability is not a deficiency, but a potent human capacity. When we grant ourselves permission to be vulnerable, we instigate the release of oxytocin, affectionately termed the bonding hormone. This neurochemical confluence fosters trust, deepens connections, and cultivates a sense of security. It is the biological underpinning of why genuine, uninhibited sharing can evoke such profound healing and communion. Furthermore, the act of confronting our fears and emotional discomfort, rather than evading them, serves as a potent form of Resilience training. Each instance we lean into the disquiet, each time we utter our truth even with a trembling voice, we augment our capacity to surmount subsequent challenges. We learn that we can endure and even flourish when circumstances become arduous. This is not about an absence of fear, it is about exhibiting courage in its presence. Consider the profound impact of embracing imperfection. When we cease our relentless pursuit of an unattainable ideal and begin to accept ourselves as we are, with all our idiosyncrasies and unpolished edges, we unlock a profound sense of liberation. This is where the essence of breaking free to be real truly ignites. Authenticity is not synonymous with perfection. It is about unwavering honesty. It is about presenting ourselves as our complete selves, not merely the fragments we deem acceptable. This courageous act of self-acceptance is a radical declaration of self-love. It is an affirmation to ourselves and to the world that we are deserving of love and belonging, not in spite of our imperfections, but precisely because of them. Our unique tapestry of experiences, our particular constellation of challenges, and our individual approaches to navigating the world are what render us distinctive. To attempt to efface them is to obliterate our own singular brilliance. Opting for vulnerability, particularly when it feels akin to stepping off a precipice, is an act of profound courage. It is a deliberate choice to prioritize our authentic selves over the craving for external validation or the seductive illusion of absolute safety. It signifies a willingness to endure the visceral cringe of potential embarrassment or exposure, and to proceed regardless, because the reward, genuine connection, deeper self-understanding, and unadulterated freedom far outweighs the risk. This courage, birthed from vulnerability, cultivates our self-esteem in a manner that no external accomplishment ever could. It reinforces the fundamental truth that we are intrinsically valuable, that our worth is not contingent upon our performance or our flawlessness. It is the resounding affirmation that we are worthy simply by virtue of our existence. Ultimately, the trajectory toward genuine freedom does not entail the eradication of discomfort or the obliteration of fear. It involves learning to engage with them in a dance. It is about comprehending that the very elements we endeavor to conceal, the aspects of ourselves we deem too fragile or too flawed, are frequently the keys to our emancipation. By shedding the burdensome armor of pretense and embracing the raw, unvarnished truth of our inner landscape, we do not diminish, we become undeniably, powerfully, and authentically ourselves. This acceptance is not a final destination, but the nascent step on the path to true freedom, paving the way for the next critical component, reclaiming our voice and asserting our presence in the world. Conclusion: the cage of comfort, with its familiar bars and soft bedding, has been our focus. It's a place many of us didn't realize we built, brick by invisible brick, with the mortar of fear and the blueprints of habit. We've explored how these self-imposed limitations can feel like a safe haven, but in truth, they are the very things that keep us from experiencing the fullness of life. Remember the vivid imagery we explored, the cage of persistent, dull pain, the internal fire that we're too afraid to face, the vulnerable baby hidden away, trembling? These are the echoes of our own minds, whispering reasons why we should stay put, why change is too risky, why the unknown is a monster waiting to pounce. But here's the truth, the one that's been dawning throughout our journey. That cage has an open door. This book has simply held up a lantern, showing you where that door is. You, and only you, have the power to push it open and step through. You built the cage, and you hold the key to its release. This journey has been about recognizing the subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, ways we hold ourselves back. We've learned to lean into that uncomfortable feeling, that cringe, not as a sign to retreat, but as a signal that we're on the edge of something important. Our minds, masters of creating self-imposed limitations, are experts at the bluff, presenting familiar anxieties as insurmountable obstacles. They tell us this is just how it is, or you can't handle anything more. But that's the mind's old trick, isn't it? It's comfortable with the pain it knows because the unknown, even if it promises relief, feels like a leap into darkness. We've also delved into the necessity of unlearning. So much of what we accept as truth is actually just echoes of societal conditioning, of cults of inadequacy that tell us we're not enough, not smart enough, not worthy enough. These are the invisible chains that form self-imposed limitations, convincing us to suppress our true selves, to wear masks that hide the very essence of who we are. And in that hiding, we often believe we are uniquely flawed, that our struggles are solitary. This belief, that we are alone in our insecurities, is itself a profound self-imposed limitation, preventing us from connecting with others and realizing that our deepest fears are often shared human experiences. The effort required to maintain this facade, this performance of being someone we're not, is exhausting. It's the ego's desperate attempt to control perception, a constant drain of energy that could be flowing towards genuine growth. This insistence on a perfect image is a heavy burden, a prime example of how our self-imposed limitations make life harder than it needs to be. Stepping through that open door means embracing vulnerability, not as a weakness, but as our greatest strength. Think back to the image of showing the baby that raw, unvarnished part of ourselves. It takes immense courage to reveal that part, the part we've been taught to protect, to hide away from judgment. But it is in that vulnerability that true connection and freedom are found. The fear of being seen, of being truly known, is one of the most potent self-imposed limitations we carry. This is your hero's journey, and you are the protagonist. No longer a passive observer in your own life, you are the one with the power to make choices, to face dragons, and to claim your own story. This requires actively challenging the self-imposed limitations that have told you you're not brave enough, not capable enough, not enough. Remember the intensity of finding your voice, of declaring, "I deserve to be heard"? That single act, that assertion of your truth, is a direct dismantling of the self-imposed limitations that have kept you silent. Freedom isn't found in quiet compliance. It's found in the courage to speak your truth even when your voice trembles. We spoke about the mask, not as something to wear forever, but as a tool that can teach us. Perhaps you used it to step into a situation you feared, and in doing so discovered that the judgment you anticipated never materialized, or that your internal reaction was far worse than any external consequence. The regret that often follows, the wish that you had acted sooner, is a powerful teacher showing you how that self-imposed limitation of fear held you back. Instead of dwelling on the tension of these limitations, learn to follow relief. It's your internal compass, guiding you away from the constricted feeling of a self-imposed limitation and towards the expansive ease of authenticity. So the cage is open. The choice, as it always has been, is yours. You have the power to step out, to shed the weight of what you've carried, to leave behind the pain that has become so familiar. What do you have to lose except the limitations you've placed upon yourself? The real you, the one that has been waiting patiently or perhaps impatiently to be discovered, is not a finished product. It is a continuous unfolding, a beautiful process of becoming. True freedom isn't about arriving at a perfect state, but about embracing the ongoing journey of discovery and expression, unburdened by the heavy chains of self-imposed limitations. The unknown is no longer a terrifying void, but a landscape of infinite possibility, a space where your authentic self can explore and grow, free from the confines of fear. You are inherently worthy, and you possess an incredible capacity for growth and for living a life that is truly, deeply your own. The greatest liberation you will ever experience is the liberation from the cage of your own making.